and welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. So on today's episode, we're going to go to the Divas concert and go watch her sing. You'll figure it out. We're then going to go to our shift as a cab driver and, I guess find this like really sexy lady that falls into our cab. But, regardless of all that, though, today we're going to be covering 1997's The Fifth Element. Now, I couldn't just do this alone, though. And not at all. I needed to bring someone in here who actually gave me the idea to do this movie. And so I thought, what better way to bring someone on who really likes it? So he is a mixed media artist. He is a filmmaker. He is also the original host and now co-host and creator of the Specter Cinema Club, which is a fabulous podcast that you should go watch and listen to and everything. But please welcome to the podcast, DeVaughn Taylor. DeVaughn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Live streaming straight from Ruby Rod's cane for this episode.
Exactly. Right.
When are the influencers going to get a hold of one of those things?
I really don't know.
I'm actually kind of shocked.
I know, exactly. We'll get into Ruby Rod and all that kind of stuff. Oh my Jesus Christ. But a little bit of history with me and DeVaughn. So, we are literally on different coasts of the United States, but I came familiar with you because you had done an episode of the Horror Queers podcast. Shout out Horror Queers. And you did the Neon Demon, which I'd never heard of in my life.
One of my all-time favorites.
Yes. And so, but it was the holiday watch along in October. Mm-hmm. So they did the Horror Queers last October did a watch along where every single day was a different category suggested by podcasts that had either been on or they're friendly with or whatever. And Specter Cinema was one of those. So I think you guys had done Fuck Them Kids or something like that.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Yes.
It was that was the luckily for me a second time I got to be included on their calendar. Yes. 2 years ago, I chose Gratuitous Blood. And then for the previous one, we did Fuck Them Kids because it's a running gag that me and Garrett have going on our pod where we, have very little empathy for children getting killed in horror movies because, hey, they're people just like the rest of us, So like if you want to have proper stakes, you gotta be you can't be afraid to go there. And that's also a proclivity that Trace and Joe also share with me as well. So it was the perfect square for that one. Yeah, love those boys.
Yeah, they're great. I'm definitely trying to get on their pod at some point. Hey, please answer my emails. But anyway, so I for that though, I think I was going to watch Color Out of Space, which I still have not watched because that movie is long as shit. But anyway, I did end up watching Village of the Damned, which is great and in its own right, I guess. And we definitely messaged back and forth about how horrible the wigs were and all that kind of stuff. But we also just have been like DMing back and forth. We've talked about Starry Eyes, another one of your favorites, and all that. And also I was just like, hey, like you seem cool and chill. Like you want to just come on my show? Because I think you'd be a great guest. And you were like, sure. And so I asked you, because I always tell my guests, anybody who comes on, with the exception of my sister, I guess, because she just will watch whatever. But I was like, what do you want to do? Like, if you're going to come on, I'm not going to choose for you because I'd rather you be like, I want to do this. Mm-hmm. And so you chose this movie in particular, The Fifth Element. Now, I'll let you start, but what is your history with this movie? Why would you want to come on here and talk about this movie? Because I know you normally do horror, so this is a little bit of a departure, which is good. I always like that. But what is your history with it? Why do you like this movie a lot? And, I then will share mine, I guess.
Yeah, I love this movie. And I'm typically a horror guy, obviously, and I go on many other horror podcasts. So anytime I get the opportunity, that's a podcast that's not strictly horror, I'm like, oh, okay, I can like show that I do watch other movies. And obviously, sci-fi gets grouped in with genre film as a whole. If you kind of think of horror, fantasy, and sci-fi, they're all genre films. So still somewhat in a tangential umbrella there. And this was a movie I remember watching super young. And I remember just immediately getting captivated by the opera singing diva. And but the thing with The Fifth Element is I hope that your fan base aren't too big of Star Wars fans, because I'm gonna backhanded shit on that movie a couple times throughout this movie.
We can do that, DeVaughn. Don't worry. I don't get it either.
because I like Star Wars. I think Star Wars is cool, but like one, the fans have kind of made me dislike it more than anything, but that's been a more recent thing. But whenever I was younger and like watching movies with my cousins and stuff, they were big Star Wars fans and they'd always put it on. And I remember thinking for a while that Fifth Element was a Star Wars movie. Like whenever I was like super young, I would get them confused. But then this was always the one I wanted to watch. I was like, no, I want to watch the Fifth Element. Or they were like, which Star Wars movie I want to watch? I'm like, Fifth Element. Like, that's not a Star Wars movie. I'm like, it's not. What? Because I mean, you know, for everything that, you know, Star Wars is praised for being this sprawling space opera and stuff. It is, but it's also, it takes itself a little too seriously. So I really love that the Fifth Element it really injects the fun into this premise. And this one, not as much as a you know, space adventure like Star Wars. This is like a space noir movie in a way, with Corbin Dallas kind of being the unwitting person that kind of gets looped into stuff. And just the production design, the music, the score behind it, everything just really works. The costume designs, like there's so many amazing looks with the different aliens and costumes and stuff. Like there's just so much movie. Like this was one of the first times whenever I was younger that I was like, this is a movie, you know, like there's just, it's very cinematic and it's just, it packs so much into this 2 hour and just like every aspect of it is cinematic.
I completely agree with what you're saying. So yeah, I recently just watched this, like, you know, just for this pod, obviously, but my history, I would say, so thanks for sharing your history. I do appreciate that. So this was not a young person thing for me. I was too busy watching Jawbreaker. Okay. And like Romeo Michelle. Okay. But anyway, so I would say the first time I probably watched this was I was at a gentleman caller's house at one point. And after one of the mornings that we like were hooking up together, we were watching a movie, or he was putting on one of the movies that he had or something, and it was The Fifth Element, and he was like, have you ever seen this? And I was like, no, I've never seen it. And so I just was like, all right, cool, I guess I'll be at your house and I'll watch this movie with you. And I think there was somebody else there, like his roommate or something like that. But anyway, I watched it and I liked it. I wasn't like head over heels for it like at first, because I was like, okay, so it's Bruce Willis and then Milla Jovovich, I guess, and then is that Chris Rock or Chris Tucker? Like, wait, what, who is this? Then as time has gone on, and that was like years ago now, you know, now I can appreciate like how phenomenal the cast is. Costumes by Jean-Paul Gaultier himself, craziness. And just, I like how this movie has this fun sci-fi adventure kind of thing going on, but then also has a level of camp in here that I don't know if Luc Besson is aware of, but is very much there, which is right up my alley. And I love that. So yeah, no, that's definitely my history with it. And of course I feel bad now with Bruce Willis dealing with his, like, you know, kind of health issues at the moment. God damn it, is he good in this movie? Mm-hmm. Like, it's great. And I also think too, it works for my show because this is both a movie that people loud and are like, this is great. Like, it got nominated for an Oscar, technically. It got nominated for a BAFTA, but it also has bad critiques of it, and also was like nominated for a Razzie and shit like that. And so I think it's very polarizing, and I think that's why it kind of fits into that cult area in a way, because you have people who are adamant supporters of it, but then there's also people who are like, I fucking hate that movie, which is perfect for me. So yeah, that's exactly why.
Yeah, it kind of sits in a weird like middle ground in a way, because it's a cult film as far as like it being a movie that people find underappreciated maybe, but this isn't like a cult film that like people are dressing up as, in costume going to the screenings. It's like not one of those ones. Except, I mean, Lilu is a pretty popular costume. I've seen cosplayed around, but this one, it kind of has that, like every few years, it'll kind of have like a surge where people are like, oh yeah, remember like how good The Fifth Element was? Like, look at like, the big bombasticness that we were getting in 1997 that like, I mean, still few films, in the past 25 years have still kind of reached the kind of scope and scale of this movie. So it's like, I feel like it's one of those ones that, and again, because it does have that Star Wars kind of shadow hanging over it, I feel like it does just kind of continuously get discounted and like left out of those conversations. But like this is the yassified Star Wars, and like that's why it's perfect. Like the level of camp is there's no way that the level of camp in here wasn't intentional. Like Luke, he's a very artsy French guy. He understands, he knows what's going on, and I love just the commitment that it has. And I know that I guess some of the silliness and stuff is people might not take this movie as seriously, especially with the big climactic ending and like the story, the message that they're kind of hammering over this, that, like, no, we shouldn't destroy everything we need to love and, life and all these things. So it like kind of has a little bit of a cheeseball quality to it a little bit, but it's also genuinely committed to that though. Like it's very earnest in what it's doing. Like it doesn't feel like it's like trying to be cartoony. It's like, no, like we are kind of being genuine about this. And it's like, and it's okay to have fun with this. Again, like I feel like sci-fi got so serious, especially in the 90s. Sci-fi movies became just like really serious all the time. And it's like, hey, we can have fun,
I agree. And I think like, there's only so many sci-fi movies I kind of fucks with like that. I mean, Alien is definitely one where I'm like, oh, it's amazing. And there's that. And even something like Event Horizon, which I think is very underrated, but I think is a fantastic like space horror movie, space horror sci-fi movie.
Also 1997. Good year for sci-fi.
Oh, Sam Neill. We'll talk about him in another episode. But anyway, but as we normally do on the show, we'll go through some figures of the movie, a little bit about the production of that. I'm sure you have some stuff to add to that as well. And then we'll also get into just a plot summary of this film as well. So let's move on to our figures. So as you stated, this was directed by Luc Besson. It was written by him and also Robert Mark Kamen, and it was produced by Patrice Ledoux. So this is also a French and like American like co-production pretty much, because Luc is a French dude. This was released May 7th of 1997. So when this episode's going to drop, this is around that same time, which is always fun. We're looking at an estimated budget of about $90 to $93 million, which is insane. And we're looking at a box office of $63,820,180 for the US and Canada, and then a gross worldwide of $263,920 and $180 pretty much. So the big idea is that in the States, this flopped technically, but I think it was the French folks who were like, hell yeah, French people, and we're gonna like go see this, I guess. And maybe the Europeans or whomever else, I guess, were like, hey, we'll fucks with this a little bit more. Because I just even looking at that, I'm like, wow, yeah, if we're looking at a $90 million budget, like 63 million just in the States. But they came through, I guess. yeah,
totally flopped in the States, which is kind of wild. I mean, I'm again like the landscape of 97 that we were like, just like, because I feel like especially like once like the Matrix happens in a couple of years, that's when people are really starting to get back on board with sci-fi stuff. So I feel like it just maybe was a couple of years too early, because like it overall it did that tripled its budget. So that's about breaking even, really, essentially, when you think of budget and then marketing and everything, and then making a profit. So it's like it barely made a profit, and then it's like goes to one of those things that's like, hey, look, when you spend a bunch of money on this original idea, you're not going to make the money. And I feel like that really sucks, because it's like we didn't get more of these kind of big expansive movies like this. This was not based off of anything. This was Luc Besson like wrote this when he was a teenager and like developed it for 20 years. Like that's, insane.
It is. Yeah. And I don't know. I think Spice World was a little too early, I guess. So I could say everyone was just going to see Spice World, but now people were seeing like, I don't know, the fucking Lost World for Jurassic Park, or they were like doing whatever the hell we were doing in 97, I guess. I don't know. I was there, but I was like a baby. So not really, but whatever. We're looking at a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes and an 86% audience score. And then IMDb score of 7.6 out of 10 and an IMDb score of 3.7 out of 5. And so for our cast, we have Bruce Willis as Corbin Dallas, Milla Jovovich as Lilu, Gary Oldman as Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg, or just Zorg, Ian Holm as as Vito Cornelius, the priest, Chris Tucker as Ruby Rod, Luke Perry in the beginning of the movie as Billy Masterson, Brian James as General Munro, Tommy Tiny Lister Jr. as President Lindbergh, Lee Evans as Fogg, Charlie Creed Miles as David. We then have Ivan Hang as Left Arm and Tricky as Right Arm, who I guess are like, I don't know, I think they work for like Zorg or something. We have John Neville as General Stoddart, who, funny enough, if I'm not mistaken, was also the Dean in Urban Legend. So it's kind of funny that he was in this movie beforehand. I was like, okay, John Neville. John Blutow as Professor Piccoli, and then Maiwen Labasco as the diva, who literally was married to the director, I think, for a minute, and then he broke up with her to go with Milla Jovovich. So that's fun. I love that.
No.
I think that happened. We are looking at some critical response quotes. So we have Jeff Andrews from Time Out, so maybe a gay, who states, Besson's futuristic fable is flawed by a messy narrative, which strains to incorporate far too many grotesque and eccentric characters. We then have Dwayne Berg from The Hollywood Reporter, who states, narratively challenged, visually monotonous, and orally overpowering, The Fifth Element is a staggering accretion of all the wrong elements and some rather dopey ones as well. And then we have Zaki Hahason from Zaki's Corner, who states, aside from Besson's impressive directorial or panache, always providing something eye-catching and original to look at, there is little else about The Fifth Element that is particularly noteworthy. I always like reading the fun, like, stupid, bad comments or whatever, because why not?
Interesting. Those are some interesting assessments to it, because, I mean, narratively, I mean, it's a very simple story. Like, it's a simple story. It's just like, but it's that noir. Again, it's like the mashing of subgenres just might not work, because like that noir format where it's just like, oh, okay, you got all these different characters that kind of intersect at different points and they all want the same thing, but only certain people are on the same page. So it like kind of creates that confusion, but like the story itself is like pretty damn simple. We need the stones. She's the key. We gotta defeat the evil planet that's like coming towards Earth. Like, it's very simple. So I find it interesting that people would kind of complain about the narrative aspect of it, when it's like, yeah, it's pretty straightforward, and like it's mainly for, to like get, just the visuals and like to, I mean, like the amount of time that was like put into just like the details in that opening chase scene, like through futuristic Brooklyn. Like when you just like look around and see all the little details that they like put in for this, like these are the things that like he was like kind of trying to explore. Like for me personally, whenever I watch movies, I'm a more world building based type of person. I could kind of care less about the plot sometimes. I'm more about vibing out in that world. And you really get, put into this, and there's so much texture in this world. So like, I find it odd that, the excess of it is kind of complained about.
I can agree. Yeah. I mean, it is kind of, the thing is that the story is simple for the very fact that this guy, Luc Besson, and I'll get to it in my production history, but like he wrote this when he was 16, as you stated earlier, and then he developed it for 20 years. So yeah, some of these things are fairly simple where you're like, oh, I love how the Nostalgia Critic does a video on this movie, and he says, written by a 16-year-old, eh? I'm like, yeah, we can kind of tell with some of the stuff where you're like, yeah, that still is around. But, overall, he did try to, I think, mature it up in a little bit of a way, but there are some parts where you can be like, okay, yeah, like this was written by a 16-year-old, wasn't it? Okay. That doesn't take away from it, though, I don't think. But maybe for some people it does. Who knows? We'll get into a little bit of the production. So as we stated, as a teenager, Besson, living in France, I guess, envisioned the world of The Fifth Element to just kind of pass the time and not be bored, I guess. So he began writing this at 16, although this wasn't really released until he was like 38. So he had developed the story, I guess, and also brought in the other screenwriter to kind of help finesse it, I'm sure, as well. But the original story was actually set in the year 2300, and it was about a nobody named Zaltman Balaros, I believe, or he was then renamed Corbin Dallas. He wins a trip to Club Med Resort on the planet Fhloston Paradise, which still stays in this movie, in the Angel Constellation. He then meets Lilu, a sand girl who has the beauty of youth, despite being over 2,000 years old. So that was the original story. And then, of course, he finessed it a little bit differently. But he worked on it for a couple of different years. And then by 1991, he had a documentary come out called Atlantis, and that was released. He had like a 400-page script, which is why this movie is like 2 hours long, because I'm sure he had to cut it down. But what ended up happening, though, is that a guy by the name of Nicolas Seydoux and Patrice Ledoux from Gaumont were the first people who actually took on this project. And in 1991, while looking for actors for the movie, he actually brought on some fresh comic creators to actually help kind of like get together this production design for this movie. And it appears that that's really what helped like inspire these comics he saw, helped inspire what ended up looking and what it ended up being futuristic New York and our future in general in this movie.
I really like that this movie like kind of brings in all these different artistic elements that Besson is interested in, like kind of similar like a Jim Jarmusch, like Luc Besson like really is he soaks in art from like everywhere. Yeah. So I love that he was like, okay, for the production design, let me get these comic book artists. And then Jean-Paul Gaultier, like, you know, one of the hottest names in fashion at the time, and he's an absolute, you know, legend, to get that in. So it's like really this is like a hodgepodge of different artistic elements going on.
Yes, absolutely. So there's that. And then, so as you stated, Jean-Paul Gaultier was brought in and, you know, made the outfits for this movie. And then in terms of casting, he really only had two people in mind. He wanted either Mel Gibson or Bruce Willis. I'm glad he went with Bruce Willis because Mel Gibson is a piece of trash. But anyway, so he was a little apprehensive though, because Hudson Hawk, who he had just been in, and Billy Bathgate, which two movies that didn't do very well. So they were like, all right, let's do this. And I think Gibson actually turned the role down anyway. So Bruce Willis like was kind of just in there, which is
thank goodness. It all worked out for the best.
It really did. And so then, okay, like Luc Besson, he's doing his thing, and he then makes a little movie called Leon the Professional with a young Natalie Portman in it, and that movie did fairly well, and I think also helped secure him being able to bring this together, because if I'm not mistaken, like that movie did pretty well critically, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember if it was like nominated for awards and stuff like that, but Leon the Professional is probably, aside from The Fifth Element, is Besson's one of his like most notable like films he did. So, and he has a lot of people who like it. Pretty much they were like, all right, hey, look, like we want you to do this, we want you to do your little space film or whatever, but we're going to reduce your budget to $90 million. You cannot have more than that. Okay. And so Columbia Pictures ended up financing the movie for him. And so, so they ended up going with Bruce Willis, who again was a known person, obviously. But I think also, too, they were going to have other people who were a little less expensive. So at this time, like Milla Jovovich, for example, she, out of like 200 or 300 people were brought in, but she was a lesser known name technically. She had been in Dazed and Confused and maybe a few other things before that, before she was in this. But I personally would say this was really a big break for her, because Dazed and Confused was not exactly a critical thing either. I mean, people liked it, I covered it, but you know, it's one of these things where I think this really shot her to, then it makes sense where she then went on to do the Resident Evil movies. She went on to do all the stuff that Milla Jovovich has done. So she's an icon and I love her. But yeah, so she was brought in. I kind of wonder who else was considered for Lilu though, because she does so well in this.
Yeah, thinking of who it would have been at the time. I mean, maybe like a Jennifer Connelly could have pulled it off. I would say maybe that'd be the only other person, but like, yeah, Milla was just so perfectly casted. I mean, between her and Haley Williams, my love for fake redheads was ignited very early on for me. I mean, she looks gorgeous in this, but like she also, you know, she plays that the all knowingness, but then also still learning, like that like duo of it. She plays it super well, but also very funny that. So she ends up marrying Luc Besson in 97. So somewhere around the time that this movie comes out, this movie comes out in 97. We already mentioned Event Horizon also came out in 1997, directed by her future husband, Paul W.S. Anderson. Weird.
Very weird. Makes no sense, but it all kind of works out together. Also, I would have had Milla Jovovich if she wasn't already in this movie. She could have been in Event Horizon. That would have been fine. And then even like Gary Oldman. So this is before he was Sirius Black, but I think he was kind of I'm sure he was a known actor, but I think he was just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know how famous he was.
I mean, he was like, he was a pretty like well-known character actor, like even at this point, because this is post Dracula, and which was like kind of really what got him in genre people's minds. But then like he also had True Romance like a few years earlier with, you know, a super memorable cameo. So like he was doing stuff and like, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s. So it was almost like kind of odd that it was like, oh, he's like kind of this like up and coming, like, you know, like he was like an up and coming prestige actor, but then he was also appearing in, you know, Tony Scott's True Romance and Coppola's Dracula. So it's like he had like this prestige element to him, but then he was working with all these like very artsy directors at the time also.
Which I guess we could throw Luc Besson into there, of course, too. So that makes sense. Yeah, no, totally. I always think of Gary Oldman, not in a bad way, but he reminds me of like the male Helena Bonham Carter, because probably they're both British. So I'm like, I'm kind of here for them. Like they both could do like these weird, wacky roles, but then also like they've done the Merchant Ivory shit. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like, all right, like, cool, let's go with it. And they both were in Harry Potter, so that's fun too.
Yeah, he has an interesting reach as far as like, yeah, he's might be your grandpa's favorite actor from JFK, but then he could also be a film bro's favorite person from True Romance. So it's like he kind of occupies this like interesting area, but and Bruce Willis too, just I think is absolutely perfect. He was, you know, his name was like kind of fading a little bit in the 90s. Like he was also kind of you know, going into taking a little bit more chances with stuff like Death Becomes Her and Pulp Fiction a few years before. So he was like kind of getting outside his typical action shtick and kind of dipping his toes in some more genre-esque places. And I think that works out perfectly here, where you kind of do have him as that classic action guy, but then he is very charming and like, but the way he like kind of reacts to the world around him, that he's like still a 90s action guy, but living in 2318 or whatever. So it's like that dichotomy works out really well. But like, I'm gonna say it, I think this is the hottest Bruce Willis has ever really been in a movie. Like this slutty orange tank top that he's rocking for the first half of the movie, the boots are slaying. Like he looks fucking damn good in this, and
he
like
looks great.
The way that he speaks, like they really weaponize like his like very like calm, grizzled voice and like his charm and stuff. Like he's really sexy all around in this movie.
I know, he really is. Thank God you're queer, DeVaughn, because I mean we need to.
I mean, everyone in this movie is hot. Like everyone. Really, this is a very horny, hot movie. Like
even Zorg. I mean, I guess so. Yeah, I'll go with
Zorg. He's rocking his shiny pinstripe suit. I respect it. And then like whenever Ruby Rod's being all creepy with the flight attendants, it creepy, but at the same time, like, damn, his skin and lips look really good. I was like, God damn, everybody in this movie looks really hot.
I know. It's so crazy.
I've never thought Chris Tucker was hot ever.
I know, right? I mean, hey, well, you know, it's fine. And his whole character too. I mean, I don't know why they cast him exactly. I mean, I'm sure it was like, I think it was literally between him and Jamie Foxx, if I'm not mistaken. I'm cool with this. You know, it would have worked. But yeah, I'm just like, he's also named after like a periodic table element, which is really fun. So I think that's cool.
He's I've noticed Ruby Rod is like a divider for people of this movie. I feel like the people that love it are the ones that are like, yeah, no, Ruby Rod's cool. But then when people dislike this movie, almost one of the first things they'll mention is how much they hate Ruby Rod. So it's like, it's kind of, you know, you got to have that little wild card character in here.
Yeah, but I think that's also supposed to be by design. I think Ruby Rod is made to be not that 100%. I think. Yeah, not that Luc Besson was like predicting the future or whatever, but he is very much like this influencer before influencer was a thing. And, you know, was obviously like, it's so funny that now it's like, yeah, no, there are people who literally for a living, I don't know, talking to a microphone and hope that people listen to them. Anyway, but there's people who, you know, are YouTubers and who are streamers and like all this stuff. And so he was doing that back then, which I thought was really interesting. And, you know, it's just interesting how that kind of came up. But he is by design supposed to be annoying. So Yeah, why not? I'm totally cool. And he's like kind of queer as hell because I'm like, okay, so you're eating out the flight attendant. Okay, got it. Who, everything, those flight attendants. You're also like really flamboyant and I can't tell what's going on. So like, I can't help but like think, okay, this must be some kind of queerness. I don't know.
Oh, he's got to be. I mean, Ruby especially, but he kind of is like a representative of like this open kind of pansexual nature of this movie, because you got to think about it, it's like they are not only intercoursing with each other, but it's like that other species are fucking each other too. Like people are hooking up with aliens and humans and all these things. So it's like really there's kind of a whole just like pansexual vibe in general with this of just like anybody can be with anybody. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, totally. And yeah, I can agree with that for sure. So yeah, a little bit about like just the production of this movie. So it took about 21 weeks to film with the actors and all that, because of course this is both, it's a mix of like, having these live actors in here. Then you have characters, creatures that are made obviously by CGI and special effects. Then you have all the CGI of this whole fucking movie because it's futuristic. So flying cars, the whole thing. But yeah, it seemed like a lot of this was done in London. It was very much a European type of thing. So London, I'm pretty sure they also did the opera scene at the Royal Opera House as well. And yeah, a couple different places. And I think they even went to, apparently they were supposed to be in Egypt in the beginning. They went to Mauritania to kind of get that same thing, which I'm sure was maybe cheaper to like, shoot there or whatever. But this was because even though it was filmed in London, it was a French movie because the guy's French and it's just a co-production, I guess. So actually, I might be wrong about that. I think this was just a French production. Might have not even been a co-production with the US. We just happened to get it. So it just so happened to have actors of ours in it.
Yeah, I think it was mainly a French production, but then it was like a co-distributed with American companies.
But this was the costliest at the time. It was the costliest European movie ever made, which makes sense. I don't know what $90 million is in pounds or whatever the fuck they use over there, but I'm sure it was a lot. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, there's that kind of thing. The soundtrack of this movie is really good, and it also did really well. We, of course, have like the diva dance at the end, near the end of the movie, I guess. And so that's, of course, one of the iconic pieces of this film, intercut with Lilu kicking some ass while this is happening, which is like really, really good. And yeah, and of course, we also know too that, like, for example, Milla Jovovich ended up doing this movie. She had a whole language that she learned from Luc Besson of this actual character who's this alien. So she went and learned it, and literally, that's really cool of her. I want her to just win like a really great award and like get an Oscar at some point, because I know it's in there somewhere, maybe. I don't know.
It's funny that we have, obviously, for like horror, we have Scream Queens as like kind of someone that does a lot of horror stuff and is like kind of iconic. We don't really have that for sci-fi, and Milla has been tearing it up in the sci-fi sphere for pretty much her entire career. She's made all of her money, bread and butter, obviously anchoring the Resident Evil movies, but Ultraviolet comes a little bit after this. You also have just multiple things. So it's like we need a term for the sci-fi queens out there, because Milla, she deserves her flowers.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I mean, there's only so many of those folks who I could even think of. I mean, of course, Carrie Fisher is somebody who, she was already born into a famous family anyway, but like she is definitely known as that person. Rest in peace, of course. But yeah, no, totally. I'm sure that there's people who, are in like the Star Wars or the Star Trek fandom, and maybe they get that kind of treatment, kind of like our horror gals do, which I'm hoping. And it also kind of mixes too. I think you do have some people who have both. I think of someone like I don't know if she's really done like specific sci-fi or whatever, but like someone like a Katie Cassidy. I think she's like a scream queen / like she could also be in that horror sci-fi sphere a little bit, just because she's on Arrow and shit like that, which is, I guess, is more like superhero stuff. Yeah. But then what is superheroes? Is that its own thing, or is that sci-fi? It's like true. Get into all that too.
I mean, anyway. Sigourney Weaver in there too. She's definitely sci-fi mama. That's what we'll call them for now.
She's the living one. Yeah, she's the living one, if anything. But yeah, well, Willis talks good about this movie in a 1999 interview. He did say it was a real fun thing to make. I think Jovovich also liked it, and Chris Tucker liked it. They seem to be cool with it. And of course, like Jovovich said that, she thought Besson was like the first really amazing director that she'd worked with, because you obviously then ended up marrying him for a little bit. So I guess it was good. And then we also know, of course, that Gary Oldman hates this movie, kind of. Or he has at least said like yeah, I mean, it was a job for him, I'm sure, but
it's always funny because those because I feel like he's like one of those actors that like gets it, that like, okay, if I want to be able to keep doing my like weird artsy shit, then like I gotta do the money makers here and there. And I think he was probably under the assumption that this was going to be like a real big blockbuster, and it unfortunately wasn't that. But he is a professional. You can't say that he isn't still trying in this movie. He is not phoning it in whatsoever. He's giving you a weird accent. He's twitching his eye and like doing all sorts of like very weird performance things. So it's like, I love that, even though if he's not a fan of it, he's like still like, no, I'm a fucking actor and I'm gonna act, damn it.
Yeah, no, totally. Like I can totally agree with that as well. Like Gary Oldman's so good and he is a very good actor and all that, but for him to say he's at a point in his career where he could say that, to tease a little bit, we might be doing an episode together on a certain movie on your pod. But as I stated before, like that particular movie we're going to cover, we're going to talk about it, and how one of the actresses in it said that she doesn't really like the movie she was in, but she did it, and that's good for her. But I completely agree. I think especially Gary Oldman is already fucking like Gary Oldman, so he can say what he wants, I guess.
Yeah, I mean they're entitled, as much as like there's a lot of actors out there that are just like, oh, I'm very appreciative for everything. Like they're at a certain point you can start being like, hey, like even though I did this and like I'm a professional, but like they don't always end up being the best, and they're not always your favorite thing. But I'm glad that at least Bruce and Milla are happy with this, because again, like it's so fun kind of seeing Bruce really have a lot of fun in this movie. Like he looks like he's a little bit just like more laid back and like kind of loosey goosey a little bit in this one, in a very good way.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. Like, I just think he has a lot more fun, and that's why this is and I think that's why it is kind of this like cult movie that like, it didn't do great when it came out technically, but I think people were like, I don't know what the fuck this is supposed to be, but like, I'm kind of here for it. Like, and that's why you watch it over and over again. Mm-hmm. You can't help but look at these outfits and be like, what the fuck? But like, it's so high fashion and couture. Like, all right, like, let's do it. Like, it's something where I'm just like, as you were saying before, a little bit with Star Wars, you're like, okay. I never understood that myself. And I'm really a sci-fi person that much anyway. I'm much more of a horror person, but there is a little bit of overlap there. But, I definitely think that like, I enjoyed myself watching this. And like, there's not a ton of movies like this anymore anyway. Because then you had, I never seen it. I don't know. You may have. I don't know. Valerian, which was the other movie that Luc Besson did, which I think was not very well regarded at all.
It's not great. It's definitely him trying to recapture some of that magic. That one is based off of a like French graphic novel that he was a big fan of. And that is supposed to be the story that actually inspired Star Wars the movies, because this graphic novel came out like back in like, I don't know, like the 50s or 60s. So this was apparently what truly inspired Star Wars, but then Star Wars did its own thing. And then this movie coming out a couple of years before the prequel started for Star Wars as well. So it's like, this is, so at the time, Star Wars only had the original trilogy that was like pretty much like cemented as iconic at that point. Like it didn't really have the prequels to kind of divide the fans just yet. So it's like people really held Star Wars movies in like such a high regard. And the one thing I'll say about Valerian is it's fine. It's interesting to look at and everything, and it's fun. But that is what happens when you completely miscast your movies. Like, oh my goodness, like Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne, which I love them both, and like when they're employed properly. But like Dane DeHaan was supposed to be like the Corbin Dallas, essentially. He's supposed to be like this like cool hotshot, like cocky, badass.
You
like,
might as well put Timothy
soldier.
Chalamet up in there. I mean, really, I'm supposed to believe, and I've never seen Dune, but like I'm supposed to believe that this guy's a badass. Are you kidding me? Really?
I think, I mean, I haven't watched Dune yet either, but from my understanding, he's more of a moody boy than supposed to be like a badass. Like in Valerian, this guy is supposed to be like he's supposed to be even cooler than Corbin Dallas and Valerian.
Exactly.
And Dane DeHaan just did not bring that. Him and Delavigne have no chemistry whatsoever. So like, that's a good example of being like, you can put a lot of things in place, but if you miscast those roles, you're kind of screwed. And like that again is part of the magic of this movie, that when you look at all the names on this ensemble, it's just like who are you, like, what was the casting director, what was their list when they were kind of like, filling these things out and then kind of piecing together this interesting ensemble that just happened to work out really well.
Yeah, exactly. And so, oh gosh, like, we gotta talk about that stuff because it's not canon or anything, but it's definitely like, oh, Besson, you did good with this, at least, buddy. There you go. But, don't ever do that again. Ugh. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so, and then you have some people who, have said, so like, you'll either love or loathe the Fifth Element and all that in some circles. I'm reading this from my notes, but the film has gained a so bad it's good status. Also, apparently, somebody from IO9, Meredith Warner, listed the Fifth Element as one of the 20 best worst science fiction films of all time, which I'm like, okay, but I see what they're saying, I guess, if you're like a hardcore sci-fi person, but I'm like, this is still fun though. Like, I don't know. I mean, people need to stop being so serious.
No, like I don't get it, because I mean, because I take umbrage when anytime when people are very dramatic about calling something the worst movie ever or one of the worst. It's like, do you realize how many movies there are in the world? Do you know how many of them are made by nobody people with nothing budgets? And you want to say that like you're going to like look at this and like, even if like, narratively and tone wise, it doesn't work for you, you got to at least like look at it and be like, the filmmaking is there. So it's like, when you see this production design and all the effort put into it and the visuals and stuff, it's very hard to say that this is a bad movie, because it's not. Like, it's got too many competent and good things working for it to be called that. But so it's just like, I just really hate when people just don't say, hey, this tone is not for me, or this is not the sci-fi that I'm looking for, because like in this movie, they're not exploring any like, new species or like any of the new technology that they introduced. It's in
They're
here
not
in the
fighting
movie.
Aliens necessarily.
They're not like fighting aliens. It's none of those like usual things. And not to say that they're not in there. Like when you look at the details and like there's all these interesting little futuristic gadgets and ideas and stuff, it's there. It's just not the primary focus. So I guess that this being a sci-fi movie, being about how love saves the world, might disappoint, the more like the science nerds, and I'm a science nerd, but this is not what I come to this movie for.
Exactly. And listen, okay, in about a month or so, I'm going to be covering another movie beloved by a lot of people, Baps. Okay. And I'm going to be doing that. And, I also will probably talk about on there that like, that movie is perfectly good and it's not that bad at all. And I think one of the reasons for that, and we'll get into it with who I'm going to be bringing on for that, I think the reason that movie flopped and did bad critically is because it wasn't made for white people. Okay. That's the kind of big reason that Paps didn't do good, because the reviewers that did that were all white. So like, but in the Black community, like, no, people love that movie and they're like, yeah, fuck yeah, Halle Berry, Natalie DeSales, like, and you're telling me that movie or The Fifth Element is worse than The Scariest 61st? Really?
Exactly.
You're telling me that this is worse than The Hip Hop Witch? Okay. Like, you're telling me this is worse than Veronica? DeVaughn Veronica. Like,
exactly. Right? So like I mean, and it's more of a, I mean, I feel like we see it more now, obviously, with like Twitter, that people like to like speak in big, blanket statements. But it's interesting that like, critics were even still kind of talking about that in this way back in 97.
Like, have you seen Veronica? Like, have you seen what Glenn Danzig did? Like, and this is my second time talking about Veronica because I can't deal with it, but also because he's a piece of shit. And like, also he literally like was like, I'm just going to go to Skid Row and like, just save on production costs. And you're in LA. So like, you could only imagine you're just like, really, dude? Like, you went to a really horrible part of LA because you wanted to save money on your movie. and that's really horrible and that's based off your weird comics, or like, yeah, it's just, but this is a bad movie. People think this is a bad movie. I'm just like, is it perfect? No, but like, is it that shit? No.
It's like this movie has like, really? We'll put more effort into one scene than, some other entire movie. So like, again, to like say that this is one of the best bad movie, I don't get that at all. But
I don't quite get it.
But it's like, what? Because the tone is silly and it's campy and it's cheeky. Yeah. Like, again, it's like, but in the 90s, so much of the sci-fi was just so serious. And like, I love that this movie is like, no, we're just going to like kind of have a little adventure. We're going to have some, misunderstandings. We're going to have some double crosses. We're going to have, a literal, like you said, like the climactic, one of the big action set pieces, comes during a literal space opera that we have in this movie. So it's like, this movie is like, hey, all sci-fi doesn't need to be gritty and like, bleak and end of the world. I mean, this is end of the world in this movie, but again, it's not played in the traditional like sci-fi sense. I feel like just too many people, again, like it's, you got to get on a movie's wavelength. And if the movie's wavelength, then for you, that doesn't make the movie bad. That just means, hey, it's not giving you not what you want, out of this. And like, for me, this is like, like as much as I like a, very highbrow scientific premise to something, I like my Black Mirror episodes, whenever, but that's for that. But for this, if I want a true, like just space adventure, I want goofy, I want fun. And like, again, this, it just plays a little bit more earnestly than Star Wars, because even Star Wars like makes it out to be like, oh, we like, you felt them that they were really trying to build this big world and lore and everything, and like everything was had so much weight to it and everything. And it's like, no, this is like the taxi cab driver that used to be this decorated soldier, he's your hero now. And like on all these the fact that like it does like a untraditional thing, like one of the facts that's thrown out about this a lot is like the hero and villain never even meet. They do not come face to face. They are in one scene together and they don't even share like a frame in that scene. They are passing. So it's like it does so many unconventional things that like you're just not. So you're looking for the traditional things in this movie, and like a lot of the times you're not going to find it.
Yeah, no, totally. And yeah, I mean, we could go on and on about it. Like, it's just these things of, I don't know. I mean, my whole show is about like, so bad it's good or whatever. And, for some folks, it's like, I really enjoy something like Carnival of Souls, but there's people who say that's a so bad it's good movie. And I'm just like, are we watching the same movie? Because like, even though, yeah, the acting can be kind of wooden a little bit, it's still very atmospheric. And I think that's why horror people really like that, and so, yeah, I just never really kind of gone on the train of like, how is this a bad movie though? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, but regardless of all that, do you have anything to add about anything before we move into a plot summary about this movie that you wanted to kind of share or anything like that?
No, I'm ready to get into this plot. And I mean, I got like all these like little details I'm excited to unpack.
Yes. Yeah, and I have my reminders app, as you may already know from any of my other episodes, because sometimes I'm just like, I need to keep this in a reminders app so I know what actually happens. So we're now going to move to a plot summary of The Fifth Element. We start out in space, because, it's a space movie, and we have space rocks that are coming towards us, and we have all of our like title sequence and things like that, and we see a galaxy. So that's what we have. I'm very like descriptive, DeVaughn. So I'm just like, what the fuck is my notes sometimes?
I mean, I will say for how much I love this movie, the opening credits are incredibly boring.
They are really boring.
They are incredibly boring. That's like one of the few knocks I do have on this movie. So you're grasping there. I get it.
I'm just like, okay. Then we see Earth, because why not Earth? And so we're in the desert. So we come down to the desert, which I guess was done in Mauritania, but it's supposed to be Egypt because we're in a pyramid or some shit like that. And we are with some white men because, just have white men. They're trying to investigate evil. So that's literally how I think of this, because we have this young guy played by Luc Perry, rest in peace, and an older guy who's there. I don't know who he's played by, but he is like doing this thing of like brushing off the dirt and stuff like that. And he's like investigating evil. He's talking about evil, it sounds like, from what I understand. But he mentions something about a fifth element. So he talks about again, evil. And then he's talking about there's this fifth element that is supposed to like vanquish all this evil or whatever. And that's what they're trying to find, is what it seems like. Am I on the right track?
Yes, it's every 3,000 years, this general evil is supposed to come, and like because it very much talks back and forth, and like, you know, this is good versus evil, light versus dark, and like it talks in like those very big broad terms. Because again, we're not trying to get into the minutia here, but yeah, it's every 3,000 years, and the stones had been kept on Earth, watched over by priests for whenever the evil comes back to use it. But then the robot alien round boys, they don't trust the humans anymore, and they say, okay, hey, we're actually going to take the stones back. We don't trust you guys. But the evil is coming in 300 years, so it's a 3,000 year cycle. But we find out at the beginning that it's 300 years out now from when this is going to happen.
Right, correct. And so then we have a monk who is coming in here. Now, is this Ian Holm, or does he come in later? Because it kind of looked like him.
I believe so.
I think it's him, but
as the first one,
as the first guy. So this is the monk. This is, I guess, Vito Cornelius.
Actually, no,
it's not
Vito's our guy later. This is a just totally different priest, because apparently the priests pass down the knowledge from over time until, you know, the 3,000 years is up. So this is a just totally different priest.
Yeah, he's just like priesting, he's monking, whatever he's doing. You know, he's in like a shroud or whatever the hell. Anyway, so he's trying to poison these men because he like gives them some kind of like tea or something like that because they're so hot under the Egyptian sun or whatever. So he's trying to poison them though, because you can kind of tell, like, you know, hey, he put something in here and he's trying to like kill these guys off because he's just like, the evil is just gonna be so horrible. Remember, everybody, this was also written by a 16-year-old, so like, again, this is probably why it's like very vast and like broad, if anything, because evil, ooh, you know, so there's that, you know.
and I think that's great though, because this is like you know, you kind of gotta keep that youthful mind for this type of movie, because like at the end of the day, it's kind of like when you're like smashing your toys, you know, together, and they're like, oh yeah, the aliens are coming. So he the shrouded man, he let the drawer guy and the explorer in.
Yes.
But then now he has to kill them because they know too much. Well, why'd you let him in the first place? You ding
exactly.
Dong?
Yeah, exactly. But they opt for wine instead, though. So he's just like, damn it, shit. Then we have a spaceship come down from Earth, and that's fun. And so, yeah, spaceship comes down to Earth. And then in my notes, I have fucking monster robots, Mondo Shawan, I guess, or whatever they're called. They come down, they look like robot turtle guys or whatever, and so they're here, and so they're a species of alien, I guess.
They're like metallic anteaters or something.
Yes, something like that. And they come down to collect some important stones, is what I have in my notes. So as you stated, these stones all represent the different elements and all that, and they are kept within this pyramid that they're in. So yeah. What ends up happening, though, is they go into the pyramid and they're going to get these stones, but then these robots get trapped behind the wall, though, because like the wall is closing in on them or whatever the hell. And so what ends up happening is that this priest, like you were talking about before, is then carrying on this mission because the priest is in cahoots with the Mondo Shawan. Like he knew that they were going to come down and get this. And so he's just like, we have to carry on this mission, and that's how you're going to do this. So that's what the priest does. And so yeah, that's what happens with that. So that's our beginning of the movie. Again, that's where Luke Perry is, and that's where he stays. And so that's him. And then we go into 300 years later after this. So I don't exactly know when that was supposed to be, but I guess that was in
1914.
There we go.
And then it picks up, 300 years later. So we're in the 2200s. Roughly.
Yes, we are. And so now the priest is there. This is Ian Holm. This is Vito Cornelius. And he is the president of this, the world, I guess. I don't know. I guess of whatever is the United States, or whatever we see this as, whatever our democracy or lack thereof is in this future setting. The president, who is a black man before Barack Obama. Wonderful. Hey, lovely. Yeah, right. The priest, though, is talking to him about evil, right? Because they're talking about Do you remember what they were talking about? Because I really don't remember exactly what they were talking about at the beginning.
So we're at the point now. So the evil is in the form of this giant living planet that is the scientists of the Federated Territories is what they're called. So I guess it's obviously it's Earth, but then the other planetary territories that we have expanded upon into now. Also, R.I.P. Tiny Lister Jr., who plays the president here. But yeah, so they know from his scientists that the giant planet is coming towards them, and they don't know how to do anything except for, we're gonna shoot at it, we're gonna try and blow it up, we're gonna do this, and that just makes the planet like get bigger. So that kind of plays on, even though it's like they are representing Earth, this is still kind of very much like that. I don't know. I feel like it's very U.S. Based in that our thing is to always take the offensive, versus like, okay, let's like really try to like rationalize out. And then this priest is telling him like, hey, I know exactly what's happening. It's this evil. We got to get the stones. But he's like, I don't get it. This just makes no sense to me. Like, blah, blah, I don't believe you. And it's just like, bro, if you would just listen, he literally has the answers. And like, that's a recurring theme throughout this movie is just like, if people would just like listen to someone when they're trying to explain something, all this, like, they literally are seconds away from the end of the world at this movie, or at the end of this movie, but yet they could have saved the world with like 2 weeks to spare if they would just like listen to people talk, Right. So it's like kind of a recurring thing that, we're as humans, we're just like kind of these volatile creatures that are just like ready to spring into action all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So then we have an old military dude who shoots at this molten space rock, as you were talking about. This is the villain of the piece, is this molten space rock. And so he shoots at it, but then we find out that we can't shoot at it because it's going to overpower us and kill us all. But then we find out, though, that this whole beginning part with the president and the priest and all that stuff is actually just a dream. And it is a dream of our actual main character, who is Corbin Dallas, played by Bruce Willis. And so we have our intro to him and who he is. We get an intro to his sick ass apartment that he has, which again is just like kind of the baseline apartment that you would get, I guess. We end up finding out that I think he gets a phone call from somebody, a buddy of his, who he like does some stuff on the side with, but his general job is being a cab driver because that's what he does. But beforehand, like we were talking about earlier, he came from the military. So he was a soldier at one time, and now because he's not any longer and he was discharged for the military or whatever, he is now trying to make ends meet by being a futuristic cab driver with his car, his taxi. Well,
the homie on the phone, I'm assuming is like one of his like former like crew people, but basically like he gives him the car, and also it's like noted that Corbin's apartment isn't labeled, his car isn't registered. It's like all these things to like keep him off the radar from I guess his military past. But man, his apartment is so cool. All the little futuristic details in this that you see, like that, instead of making his bed, he just gets a whole brand new mattress, like saran wrapped and stuff that like replaces the fridge is underneath the shower that like rotates. But one funny thing with he has his cigarette case, and to curb his cravings, it's like, oh, you only get 4 per day and you're going to quit eventually, which is a funny little invention. But then I noticed in the future that the cigarettes are 75% filter. Like it's like a long ass. So it's like the inverse of like what cigarettes are now. And I don't know why that detail like cracks me up.
It's just kind of commenting on this and be like, oh yeah, you'll quit one day, it's fine. But yeah, we find out he did have a girlfriend at one point, but they had broken up, so he is a single man, and so we just have that part. So he's a single guy. I have in my notes, Corbin also almost gets mugged, but he is goddamn cool and collected. So what happens is he opens his front door and there's this guy who's like a fucking pussy ass like mugger. Like he is like, he's gonna do it, but like he's gonna try and mug you, but like Corbin Dallas is literally just a fucking.
Well, he's tweaking too hard. Like he's literally tweaking too hard to where he cannot carry out this mugging properly. Yes. But kind of ingenious though. His little hat thing that goes up to the peephole, so that way when people look in the peephole, it looks like the hallway is empty. That's pretty genius.
Yeah, if you're gonna live a life of crime and mugging, go ahead and do that. It's fine. But he's just so calm and collected, and he's just like, "You really want to try this? Like, really? Okay, we're not doing this." And then he dances, which is really fun too.
And he takes the mugger's weapon and adds it to a rack that drops down. So like, is Corbin really just getting mugged like this every day? And he just keeps disarming tweakers trying to mug
DeVaughn,
him?
I don't know. This is what we live in 2020.
Poor guy.
Yeah, 2300 or whatever. I guess, it's just become a horrible state of the world. So I don't know, man. But we see that Corbin gets into his unregistered cab, as you were saying, and he starts work. So he's like, but then we're also find out that he has like points on his license and stuff. So he really shouldn't be driving a whole lot because he's an erratic driver, I guess, because he's about to lose his license. But anyway, he's just like, nah, fuck it, I gotta make some money, which is fair enough. Okay. Again, this movie's all over the place, kind of, sort of, but I have my notes. The priest and the president, who are real, those are real people, actually. They are then talking about evil again. And again, it's probably just rehashing what they already kind of said in Corbin's dream, I guess. But he's talking about evil. And again, talking about the four elements. So this is, I guess, where we're finding out more so. We kind of found it out in the beginning anyway, but like, yeah, these four stones that they're talking about are the elements, and there's this fifth element that is supposed to like bring it all together, or can like, I don't even know what the fifth element actually does, but okay, like this is who this is supposed to be though. They talk about the light of creation, which I guess is also a part of that too. Again, the light of creation, I guess. Do you even know what that is? Or again, I don't really know. I mean,
it's all kind of again, like broad creationism, like kind of thing. That they're again not really getting too descriptive about, which I'm glad. Yeah. It keeps this like from feeling too like religious in any way. It's like he remains ambiguous in like so many ways to where it's like it's nice to where he doesn't like have to like kind of declare like anything that he's like truly going for. But yeah, so it's like we kind of get a little bit of that, and the movie kind of the reason it's like kind of all over the place, because again it kind of has that sprawling noir vibe where you're cutting back and forth between like so many different either groups of people or one person, because it's like you got Zorg and his people, and then you got the warrior aliens that he hired but now are trying to kill him because they didn't bring him the stones, and then you got the priests, and then we cut to the army guys and the president, and so it's always like we're in a different area with like a different group of people like every like 5 minutes.
Which I think could be a criticism for the movie, and I will criticize it for that, I guess. But again, it's one of these things where you can't really read too much into the movie with that, because that is kind of the whole point, is that this is coming from Luc Besson's brain and he wanted to create this world. But yeah, that's one of those things. But you know what? On this podcast, I have covered plenty of movies that go all over the place, so it's fine. But anyway, so the Mondo Shawins do pay a visit to try to like, they just like come and they're there. But then they end up getting killed though when they're trying to pay a visit, because the Mondo Shawins, I guess, are seen as kind of like, we saw them in the beginning as like these fucking weird ass anteater fucking like weird ass aliens, but they're kind of like a lower species of alien or something to other folks. I don't know.
No, they're the above. These are the homies. Like they're the homies, and they literally are just like, we are the keys to like stopping this war. And then so they were gonna come to. So they were gonna come to the president to be like, hey, we got the key to stop this. Like, we got your back, don't worry. And then they get killed by the warriors that were hired by Zorg. Zorg is in cahoots. Yeah, Zorg is in cahoots with Big Evil.
Yes, which is the planet pretty much. Yeah. And so Zorg, we have our intro to Zorg with played by Gary Oldman, and his weird ass like haircut he has, his like pinstripe suit that you were talking about earlier, which is very
plastic
iconic.
head plate.
The plastic head plate.
Iconic.
And he's being just an evil, man, I guess. But we're getting, his kind of thing. We don't learn that he is in cahoots with the Dark Planet yet. I don't think yet. But we get just the idea that he's an evil guy, I guess, is what we get in this beginning.
He's a arms dealer. He made his money off of weapons, and he was going to trade the warriors some crates of his special guns in exchange for the stones, but then they didn't bring the stones. They're like, well, we brought the case. You didn't say anything about any stones. And so they like, yeah, they have their whole thing. And I find it funny. There's I don't even know if it's meant to be a joke, but it's like, he's an arms dealer, but it's funny because he tells the priest that he's an art dealer. I find that kind of funny. It's just like, a little play there, but yeah.
But so then, but then we have so, not to cut you off or anything, I'm sorry, but anyway, so we do have, though, from this attack of the Monashawans, so they kill him, right? But we do have a survivor from this attack, who is like just a hand. It's a piece of body. And in our futuristic world, we see that we can rebuild a person from DNA. So at this point, we think like, okay, they're going to like take this hand and they're going to rebuild this. And it's going to be, we're assuming because of, just patriarchal stuff in general and, not really thinking of that as a culture, but we think like, it'll be a guy because the Monashawans are male ? I guess, like they are all seeming to be this. But then in my notes, and I have this, I say we have a lady because when they rebuild this thing from the hand, we see that it is a woman. It is a naked lady who is here, played by Milla Jovovich. And we don't know their name yet, but this is who is pretty much the fifth element, because that's what this was. Also, an aside, this movie is actually PG-13, and I messaged you about this, that the amount of times you do see some boob in here, where I'm just like, and again, I'm somebody who I'm very much like free the nipple and all that stuff, but I'm just like, yeah, but this is a PG-13 movie. Like, how do you operate within that? But okay, I'll buy it. It was 1997.
I mean, yeah, they kind of have like the recurring thing that every time she's about to take her shirt off, they turn around, and then it covers her up. But like in the very first scene when she is reanimated, I can clearly see Milla Jovovich's nipples on that table. But I'll say that the movie, even though like the characters obviously like are enamored by her and stuff, the Luc Besson I don't think he sexualizes her in this movie. I think the other characters do. It does kind of play into like what you were saying. They just keep thinking of the perfect specimen, the great one, the great protector, and all these things. And they, even though none of those words have a gender in them, it's just like, them, assuming that it's going to be a man, and then it turns out to be a woman. But then it also, I like that they do have the little science portion that did interest me, the way that they explain, like, okay, we can reanimate if we have this much DNA, and then they go, this is a human's DNA, but then this is her DNA, and they pretty much show that it's like it has like 100,000 times the layers that our DNA has. Yeah. So it has all this genetic knowledge. And then so that's the way that they explain that. It's like, oh yeah, she's literally genetically speaking perfect versus the way that we see certain men react to her, that was like, oh yeah, she's perfect because she has great skin and she has pretty eyes and like all these things. That's like, no, she is perfect because she is literally perfect. So I like that they have that spin on it.
I do too. I kind of like it. Anyway, I have my notes that she's a bad bitch and she escapes because she's like stuck in this reanimating thing. And they're just like, okay, well, we need to like do something with her because I guess this is who's like supposed to save the world somehow. But she is a bad bitch and she escapes though. And so we see our future city landscape that she's escaping out to, because she literally gets, if I'm not mistaken, she jumps. So she doesn't jump yet. So she gets onto the ledge of a building, which is where we see our future landscape and everything like that. And then she's like kind of shimmying against the building and just trying to like, escape pretty much. But the 5-0 comes and they try to like detain her or apprehend her or whatever. And so then what ends up happening, and this is like the iconic shot of this movie, where we have her jumping from the building that she has, been shimmying on, and she jumps from the building. And then what ends up happening is that just so happens that Corbin's taxi is right what she slams into pretty much. And so, so he's of course like, oh fuck, like I'm not supposed to do anything to this taxi. And I literally just ripped the roof off of it because this lady like fell into my cab. So this is where I have Corbin and the orange lady meet. That's what I'll refer to her right now, because she is the orange lady. She doesn't have a name yet. We know it's a woman and we know that it's an alien, I guess, but we don't know anything more than that.
It's crazy like how indestructible she is, because like first she like punches out of like the they're like, oh, glass indestructible. They're like, oh yeah, totally indestructible. Like no way. And then she like just like punches straight through and then falls through a car, and all she has on her is like a couple scratches. Like she is this is one tough bitch. And
yes,
I'm also I'm a total slut for a free fall scene of any of any sort. Like in sci-fi movies, action movies, I love a good free fall scene. It just like, the falling through all the flying cars and stuff just like looks so damn cool.
No, it totally does. We then see, because she doesn't know language quite yet, but she is aware because we see on the back of his cab, or like the back seat of his cab, something that says help. And so that's how she learns what to say, help. Because all she really said was just like boom, bada bing, boom. Like that's her
big bada boom.
Yeah, right. So that's like her grasp of language. But she then sees this sign that says help, and she says, please help. Like she's understanding that like these, because he's just like, okay, well, I can't afford to do this. Like, I need to like kind of turn you in, quote unquote, in a way. But then he pretty much says, they try to arrest the orange lady, of course, because they're trying to be like, you're escaping now and all that. But you know what? Corbin says, fuck the police. And he just decides to escape. And he's just like, oh, fuck. Oh, well, like, we're already doing this anyway. I'm already going to probably, deep in shit anyway. I might as well just make it any better.
and it's interesting because it's obviously like played that he's doing it because like, oh, well, she's gorgeous. And like, but then also like her pleading, but we saw from like him having the dream of like seeing the conversation and stuff, like he's like he is linked to her. Like there is like this like kind of overall destiny like kind of thing at play. And I feel like that's what that like little him like waking up at like having the dream, because it was actually happening, but like it like is him still just like connected to this whole thing. So it's like interesting that like her falling through all those flying cars, and it's like, oh yeah, the ultimate destiny is of course she would like fall through his. But then like I'm curious because I've seen articles talking about like the born sexy yesterday theory, and I've seen Lilu be in that conversation, but the way that we see her like relearning and like stuff, it's like, no, she's not like a this way because like she's a child or she's like, young minded. It's like, no, she just has to catch up on the past 3,000 years. She just doesn't have like it's a language barrier, but then like it's her also how they show that like she has this like genetic knowledge of like everything, and the way that she like learns everything so fast. Like when she broke out, she like used the past thing to like open it up and everything. And then so is her seeing that and like how fast she takes in language and everything very much goes against and like supports that. It's like, no, she is like this like, centuries old immortal being that just like kind of has to catch up. It's not like I'm young and like not, she's not a child in this movie.
An interesting argument for sure. And yeah, I think it is interesting if some people have something besides that, because the way you put that, I mean, yeah, no, she's just like literally been born, I guess, because she was literally like a piece of a hand. And so now she is a actual person, like she's a sentient human being or alien, I guess. And so now it's just a matter of her having to catch up, which we see later in the future where she's literally just going through the encyclopedias of the computer and where she's learning everything of the past 3,000 years. I do also want to mention the sexy McDonald's worker. So that's always fun because the police actually stopped at McDonald's and we see that like these McDonald's ladies have like this like sexy outfit on or whatever. That's also a criticism I think people lob at this movie sometimes too, where it's like, oh, the women in this movie are like literally nothing other than like, you know, these aesthetically pleasing individuals that are in these like sexy clothings or whatever. Or you have someone like Lilu who is literally like the savior of the whole goddamn planet. But that's also something I think people lob at this movie, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't know if it's all that deep. I'm not really sure, but like, okay, you have your argument with that, but
I mean, again, I think this is Besson like taking jabs at, you know, Western culture and audiences. Like he's a very European guy and like, you know, but they have also been kind of known to be more progressive than us. So like this is him reflecting like, oh, like because McDonald's is obviously like a very American thing. So it's like, I feel like that's like kind of him just reflecting and like this is in New York. We are in futuristic New York at this point. So this is like him like kind of reflecting his like impression of like, you know, oh yeah, this is what I think futuristic America specifically would be like. But yeah, you could kind of say that for them. Obviously, the flight attendants have always been sexy. That's nothing new. So I feel like sexy McDonald's workers is just like the evolution into it.
We'll get into the flight attendants. Don't worry, we'll get into them.
Yeah, but it is interesting because now that I think about it, like besides Lilu and then like the diva later, there are no like prominent female characters. Like the next prominent character is Corbin's mom, who we only hear on the phone. Like I actually didn't notice like how little like women there were in like the actual like principal cast of it. But again, the like you pointed out, like Lilu and then the diva, the two female characters are, you know, the most important characters of the movie.
Yeah. Agreed, for sure. But anyway, so we see that Corbin brings the lady, again, orange lady. It's either he brings her home because he's going to hide her out or he's going to hide her or whatever, or he brings her to Vito Cornelius.
Yeah.
Who I guess he just knows.
No, he found Vito in the phone book. Okay. Because before she passed out, she said Cornelius before she passed out. And
she does say that. You're right.
Yeah. So he found him in the phone book and then brought her to his apartment.
We still have phone books in the future, everybody. This is
hilarious. So funny.
I know. Vito then explains, though, about how I put in my notes the red lady. She's either the orange or red lady. I don't know which yet, but how she is, as you were saying, very well put into words, how she is literally perfect. She's a perfect specimen for this very reason of why she is of that. Yeah, you pretty much said what he had pretty much said. This is how, like, who this is. And, you know, she is the fifth element pretty much, is what she's saying. Then we have, because she's passed out, as you were also saying, we have the creepy Corbin wanting to kiss her in some way, because again she's just kind of knocked out and she's
he says tired. Wake her up gently, and his response is, oh, so kiss her, got it. Like, what?
Right, but then she's like, oh no, like I'm gonna point a gun at you, because she's like, don't fuck with me, I didn't tell you could kiss me at all, because we love consent here at the Cult Cinema Circle podcast.
Lilu, defender of consent, we love her.
Yes, we love her, because she understands. And as you stated before, I love that you stated this, because it's not that she is young-minded, it's not that she's a child, it's just that she was literally reborn, but she's a centuries old fucking like deity thing. Like she is like this otherworldly thing, but she still understands boundaries, and you're not going to cross her boundaries, which I thought was really interesting. But then we finally get a name for her, because she has a really long ass name, of course, that she says what it is or what it is. But she gets the name of Lilu because that's what it's shortened down to. So she'll now be fourth, hence known as Lilu. But then we have my notes. Corbin and Finger talk when he gets home. So Finger is, I think, his friend on the phone, and they're talking because he, I think, has found out that his cab is like fucked, because that's Finger's cab that he was using, and he's like, listen, like I'll fix it for you, all this kind of stuff, da 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 da. He's having to deal with his life. He's just like, all right, bye. Lilu and Cornelius. Like, I'm gonna go back to my apartment and stuff, I guess. But it was nice meeting you, I guess. Like, all right, whatever. But we'll come back to Corbin though, because we then have him do a whole other thing. But in the meantime, though, Lilu getting used to the America in the year whatever the fuck we're in 3000 something. We see that she's surfing the web as you do, and eating chicken. You know, and
Chicken.
yes, and so she's like eating chicken in this like, you know, fast ass like microwave that she's using or whatever. And anyway, so but she's learning all about, as you were saying, she was learning all about history in the last 3000 years, and so that's what she's pretty much doing. So then we get into Zorg, and again, we kind of already met him anyway, but I think this is actually where we see Zorg for the first time. I think he had just been like, maybe like, I don't know if we saw his face yet beforehand, but we were like, oh, Zorg, I guess, is like the villain. But we actually get his intro. And this case was brought to Zorg, as you were stating, and it was empty because, like you were saying earlier, that, you know, they didn't say, like, you just told us to get you a case. We didn't know it was empty or not. And he's just like, oh my God, you idiots. Like, what are you doing? Like, why did you think I wanted this? But okay, fine. And so, yeah, he's an arms dealer and all of that. My notes are so weird sometimes. So I have in here the space monster plays with Zorg's guns because he shows off one of his guns and he's like, hey, this is a fucking great gun and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
So the space monsters are playing with it because they're just like kind of fucking around with each other or whatever. And then there is this like button on his gun, like the red button on the gun. And pretty much he's like, don't forget about that either. And then they push it and then they explode. So that's fun.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he has like a funny little moment where he's like he's talking shit on them as he like walks away. He's like, yeah, he's like, they fight for honor. Honor's bullshit. He's like, no, I like to deal with real killers. He's like, you know what a real killer would have done? That would have asked about that little red button. And like, yeah, he has a fun little thing there. And it's just like, okay, like I'm into this guy. I always wanted one of those guns. Those things are like, they just look really cool, even though like kind of impractical, but like it looks really badass.
Yes, he also does this is before the dressmaker ever came out, but he also does the thing where he's standing outside of where the monsters are at, or the space aliens or whatever, and he's just like smoking, and he just like takes a drag of his cigarette,
times the explosion like perfectly.
Yes, so good. And that also reminds me of the dressmaker with Kate Winslet, because she also does a similar thing. So I'm kind of wondering, like, was this somehow influenced by this? But whatever. I actually need to watch the dressmaker. I just know the meme, so I'm just like, I need to actually watch this. I think that was also made by the guy who did Muriel's Wedding, or it was like his wife or something, so I probably should watch that. Anyway, go watch Muriel's Wedding, DeVaughn, if you haven't already done so.
I haven't.
We'll talk about it. Just go do it. Anyway, so Zorg and the priests are now talking. So I don't remember what they're exactly talking about, but pretty much I really don't remember what the Zorg and Vito are talking about.
Actually really like the scene. This was there again, this is like, you know, more good versus evil kind of stuff. And basically you know, the priest is calling Zorg evil, and Zorg's like, yeah, I'm evil, but like I'm necessary, is basically what he's saying. He like makes this whole peace versus chaos demonstration. He like breaks a glass, and he's like, see, if I break this glass, first, if the glass is just untouched, that's boring. He goes, but if I break it, now look at it. There's all these machines that got to come out. And he goes, they all have a purpose. And then think about the engineers that made that machine. And he like actually makes it. I was like, okay, you kind of make a little base point here. But then
and also Zorg
like,
is choking on a cherry as well.
Yeah, but then that's like the reversal on it. He like basically makes this whole case that he's like, I'm necessary chaos. He literally basically the people from Glass Onion would have loved this fucking guy. The disruptors and the Glass Onion, they would have fucking loved this guy. But then it's like kind of flipped on when the priest is like, see, you don't have a machine though to like save your life from this cherry pit. Exactly. You know, so a nice little fun exchange there of just two. I feel like this scene was just like kind of put in because like, hey, we have these like two like regal actors, and I feel like we must give them a really juicy scene to actually act in for a moment. And I feel like that's what this scene was.
I believe it for sure. So then the priest is then escorted out after that. And so then Corbin, we find out, because he has like this there's like this like spaceship, or like, I don't know what to call it, but it's like this Chinese food place floating through the air, and he comes to his window and he finds out that he actually has been fired from his cab job. So he's like, you know what, whatever, I'm just gonna get my fucking Chinese food and I'm just gonna like figure something else out, I guess.
I wish my taco stand guys would just like come up to my window. Like
listen, I know, right? I mean, we don't have taco trucks like that here in Maryland, but hey, maybe I need to go look harder. I don't know. But anyway, but you guys have it on lock over there, though. Anyway, we find out, though, that while he has been fired from his job, we see that Corbin actually won a trip to Fhloston Paradise, and he is sent on a mission to go collect the stones. So pretty much what we find out in this scene is that he won this because his mom calls him. And he's like, "You've been on the radio, like, for the last hour or whatever," right? And so
I love her, and she's not listed on Wikipedia though. Who is she? I need to find who voices his mom.
It's probably Tara Strong. Like, let's be real here. It probably is. Like,
that would actually make sense. I'm gonna find it on IMDb while we're working up. But yeah, the military like rigged just somebody.
He rigged it. Yeah,
rigged the competition so that way, because they wanted it to be a discreet mission to go get the stones, not a big military thing. Which, I mean, yeah, makes sense.
That's true. And so they're just like, hey, look, like, you're just like this guy, but you're this decorated war hero, and we're going to send you to this place to go get these stones. Okay, have fun. But in this case, though, so the military comes to his house, but then you have the coded like lesbian lady. I don't remember her name, but she's like one of the military people. She's definitely coded as a lesbian, which I think is fun. Because
her name was something. It was like Iceberg. Yes, which made me laugh.
Yes, because that's supposed to be his wife. So he and his wife are going to go to Fhloston Paradise, and that's how the ruse is going to be kept up. But the police come, and the police are coming because they're like, oh, okay, like they just are coming to try to arrest somebody. They're gonna arrest like Corbin's neighbor, I guess, because he's unlisted, as you stated earlier. So like, they don't actually know where Corbin is, because they're gonna come, I guess, arrest Corbin, but they don't know where he's at. So instead they have his like neighbor that I guess they're gonna try to like
well, it was Corbin. He stuck his little card thing in the other guy's door. So it was like him. He knew the cops were coming, so he had to give him the slip.
Yeah, true, right. And then we have Zorg and his like weird alien pet that he has, like his version of a cat, I guess, because he's the evil man. But anyway, so because they always have animals, so this is his weird alien pet he has. But yeah, so they go and arrest his neighbor because he frames him and all that. We then have, though, that the priest has come to Corbin's place because he's found out about this mission and everything like that. And pretty much he tries to steal the tickets. He steals them. He knocks Corbin out pretty much. And he's just like, no, like, this is way too important. I need to go do this because I know what to do. Like, you don't know anything. But then, though, he does this. And I think also like the military guys are like frozen to death as well. That also happens at some point, if I'm not mistaken.
The military people showed up. Military people showed up to convince him, and then puts them away, and then the church, and then the priest comes to like steal stuff, and then and then that leads to the airport shenanigans of like 4 different people trying to be Corbin to get on.
Yeah, because at first he doesn't want to do the mission, but then he's like, you know what? That priest like knocked me out or whatever the fuck. I'm going to go take this mission. Why the fuck not? Let's do it. Because at first I don't think he wants to do it, but then he ends up doing it. And as you were stating with the airport, go on.
This is like the most like of the noir vibes that I get. Like, again, we kind of have like this intersection of all the different characters. Because it's like, because now we got like the warrior aliens. They're pissed off because Zorg killed a bunch of them, so now they're just trying to kill Zorg. They don't even give a shit about the stones,
right?
But they want to kill Zorg, so they're trying to pose as Corbin, and then Zorg sends his homie to also pose as Corbin. And then the priest sends the young guy who was gonna pose as Corbin to actually go with Lilu, and then but Corbin doesn't trust the priest guy, so he replaces and actually goes on the mission. But it's funny, like 4 different people going up to the same flight attendant lady trying to pose as Corbin is like, again, like the mistaken identity shenanigans that come along with, again, these kind of noir vibes a little bit.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, he goes to the airport, which is filled with trash, apparently. So that's how it is. And hey, listen. But anyway, so we then have David, who is the assistant to the priest. He tries to go on there, but Corbin is just like, oh hey, like, you know, I'm actually Corbin Dallas, and he and Lulu actually get on the plane, and then all the other shenanigans happen after that. I will say also that these stewardesses are serving like. Their outfits are so iconic. Like they're so good.
They look so fucking good. I love that they all have freckles is like funny. Like, yes. Is that part of the interview process when they become a stewardess? Yeah. Also got to have the freckles, girl. But yeah, they look amazing with the blonde wigs. I love them. The boots, everything.
I love them all. And then one of them is technically Stacey Francis or whatever her name was. She was on Canada's Drag Race the first season, and she has that like really low voice or whatever. She's like one of the judges on there, but she was on The Fifth Element as one of the stewardesses because she was a model, like most of these ladies probably are. Anyway, cool. I'm surprised, although I'm not surprised though that like Tyra didn't get one. I mean, it would have been very apropos if she could have, but I mean, you know, it would have made sense in the universe to put Tyra Banks in.
That would have been iconic.
I know, right?
Or if Tyra was like that main one at the counter and interacting with all of them, that would have been perfect.
It would have worked. And instead she did, you know, Halloween Resurrection and all that other. Anyway, but you know, we'll talk about it. Anyway, we finally meet though Ruby Rhod, because throughout the movie we have gotten a little bit of who he is, but like we haven't actually met him yet. He's played by Chris Tucker. And so we finally meet him. And so, you know, because that's where Stacy, whatever her name is, she's just like, oh, Mr. Dallas, like, you know, I'm whatever to this. And she like leads him into like this back area or whatever where Ruby Rhod is. Ruby Rhod is what the fuck is he? An influencer slash
he's a radio host. Yeah, he has a radio talk show, but they live stream that they keep saying live. So it's like, so yes, and because he hosts the station that sets up the giveaway, the contest, and everything. So it's like funny, you know, Ruby Rhod again, he's that wild card character. He comes in and he's a character that, you know, that the military people, they didn't think of this when they like, oh yeah, we're going to rig the contest and you're going to go as, you know, and you're going to go on this vacation, but you're going to do the mission. But then they didn't think like, oh yeah, this trip it's like this radio thing. So he's supposed to be like getting interviewed by Ruby Rhod and all these things. And it's just like adds in just like extra variables into this whole mission on top of him just being like it's so funny. Like he comes in so loud. And it's just like this scene, like, and again, it's just like if you like this scene, and it's like this is like almost like exactly like halfway through the movie. So it's like at this scene, it's like this is your last chance to hop off if like you did not want to be here.
No, seriously,
because like this is the level that we're gonna like kind of go to now.
And you know what's funny is that as many of people who I think of, really Chris Tucker, I mean, he does everything that he can with this role. And I really can't see anybody else playing this. Like really, like I think he nails it. He nails this like annoying person because he's like kind of an annoying comedian, stand-up guy. He can be.
Yeah.
Like but I don't want to see John Leguizamo in this. Like he maybe could have done it because he can be kind of annoying, you know, like especially back then.
Yeah, because it would have had to have been one of those type of comedians. Because you mentioned it was like Jamie Foxx was talked about, and I love Jamie Foxx, one of the most talented person in the world, but he doesn't have the annoying factor though. He doesn't. Like he's he's too cool and likable, you know, like
Jim Carrey wouldn't have worked, I don't think. I like that it's a black person. I enjoy that. That's kind of fun. I think it could have been them or one of the Wayans. Like, I think maybe one of the Wayans could have done it. Maybe.
Yeah. I could say it, but at the same time, Chris Tucker, he's absolutely perfect here. Like he takes it exactly to like the edge, like of it almost being too much. Like
if this was done in the 2000s, it would have been Cat Williams. Do you know what I mean? Like it would have been. Goodness. No, I'm just saying. No. Like please, I don't know. No. Maybe like it could have been. I don't know, because they kind of remind me a little bit of each other. Where I'm just like I need somebody annoying. So like, because Ruby Rhod is supposed to be that. So I'm like, let's throw him in there.
But he's also just like such a distinct character. Like just like so like as soon as he comes in, I'm not even thinking about that it's Chris Tucker. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, like this person, like, you know, who is Ruby Rod? Like it builds that out like really well.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, he's iconic. Love him or hate him, he is iconic.
Love it, love it. Yeah, so Corbin and Lilu, they head to their seats, which are really just like capsules, I guess. Like capsule beds. And then we have so they're like about to lift off, and so the stewardesses are doing all their things to like say, hey, like be in your seats or whatever. Seats. Then we have some cunnilingus on the plane, delivered by Ruby Rod to one of the stewardesses, where she is about to have a complete orgasm on takeoff, and all that. Because we have intercut like Lilu and Corbin. We have this going on.
And then it's also the people refueling the plane and like cutting to this and like, yeah, just it's so funny. Yeah, I don't know. And again, I love look at Ruby Rod. He's a giver in his Mile High Club endeavors.
Exactly. But then the plane takes off though, and there's an explosion at the airport because I think that this was planned out to like explode or whatever. So we do have that explosion happening, and I guess some people died at the airport, I'm guessing, but
yeah, well, since the Warriors couldn't get onto the plane, that was their plan B apparently.
Yeah, we're just gonna blow the fuck shit up, but it's fine. So then this is where we get the Zorg. So we're gonna start speeding through a little bit. You know, we're halfway through the movie. Again, this thing's 2 hours, but again, we have the Zorg. I know, right? But the Zorg and the Shadow talk. So again, Zorg is like the main villain, but then he answers to the Shadow, which is like this like dark planet thing or whatever. And so gunk or blood or whatever is then flowing down Zorg's face when he's talking to the Shadow.
Yeah, you ever get so nervous that your forehead starts bleeding?
Exactly.
I've never understood it, but I never get it either. It's so odd, but I don't know. Is that the Dark One's influence over the phone?
I don't know. Yeah. I'm just like, okay,
also
cool.
The fact that the living planet creates wavelengths so he can talk to people on the phone. Fucking hilarious.
Love it. It's, you know, this is the future, everybody. But then we have our arrival at Paradise. So we have that going on. The priest has stowed away. So he was able to get in while they were refueling or whatever. He ends up like figuring his way in there. Cause he's like, oh, I'm not going to miss this. So he stows away, and then, you know, he comes to Corbin and Lilu and he's like, hey guys, what's up? And so we then have Corbin and his mom talk. So this is after they get off the plane. They're at Fhloston Paradise, and they go to their really pretty blue room that they have with like the old timey phones, and like, it's a very pretty room. I really, really like it. Him and his mom talk though.
I really love these like little moments between him and his mom. Her name was Jill Mullen, is the voice actress.
Oh, really?
She has like not many other credits, but she delivers.
She does deliver. I love her. But anyway, so the Corbin and the mom are talking, and so they talk a little bit, but then we also get this is our intro to, because we leave out of their room, and Lilu's just kind of like going around, like she's just kind of prancing around somewhere. I don't know. She's not in the room with Corbin though. But we get our intro to the diva, because the diva, we don't quite see their face though, but we see just their figure or whatever, and they're going into their room. And so we like see her going into her room, and we're just like, oh, okay. Because we find out that one of the reasons that people go to Fhloston Paradise is to go see the diva in concert. And so that's where Corbin and Ruby will be later tonight. So there's that.
And it's so random that the robot anteater homies, they didn't trust the humans to wash the stones anymore, but they trust a traveling opera singer.
Yes,
I found and there's no like reasoning behind it. It's never explained, like that like her race is like, you know, sacred protectors or something like that. Nope. They're just like, they just go, no, they really trust her.
So that's what we're gonna give her. I would too, stones, I guess.
And I would too.
Why not? Yeah, exactly.
That veil's so mysterious.
I know, right? So Corbin and Ruby, they end up heading to the theater, and, you know, Ruby's kind of talking to Corbin, because this whole thing is that Corbin is like a man of very few words, so he doesn't really want to say anything. And they even have that conversation like before they take off, I think, was like, you know, hey, this is boring, like, you know, you need to be more high energy or whatever. And he's just like, I'm not really that though, like, what are you talking about? Like, okay. But yeah, so Ruby Rod is kind of like showing him around everywhere with everybody and all that, which is fine. But then they take their seats at the theater. And so then the diva is revealed. And then this is like our kind of iconic part of the movie as well, where we have the diva is revealed to be this like blue alien thing who is an opera singer, and she begins singing. So intercut though with this, so we see that she's singing whatever the fuck opera she's singing. But
I love it. I'm not a big opera person, but like I'm here for Luc Besson, like giving us like literally like a good 3-4 minutes of this before it actually even like kicks into the intercutting with the action. Like he literally is just like, here, like let's just take a moment to have a nice little pretty moment. And like you see Corbin's like eyes are all glassy and stuff, and it's just like it is like before the action and mayhem, it's just like a nice like, hey, let's just take this in for a minute. And I remember always being just very captivated by her look whenever I was younger, and like the makeup work is with her like big tentacle head and like the tendrils coming out from behind her, like just a very striking looking feat of makeup and practical effects.
Totally. And so also mixing it up a little bit too, where she's like, and I also love the people who have tried to do this like in real life, because none of these notes actually can be hit by like literal human beings, although some people have gotten close. But it's always fun to kind of see those people try to cover this, which is really fun. In the meantime, though, because Lilu decides she's going to beat some ass, because I guess what was happening is that these like warriors or whatever Zorg like hired, they're coming in and they're trying to like steal some shit from the diva. I guess
they're trying to also steal the stones because they want to get their shit from Zord.
Yeah, but we do see that Lilu is beating some of their ass because she sees them like break into her room and like all that stuff. And so we really see what the fifth element can do. And we see that like she really can like beat the fuck out of you, which is great. And it's intercut with this diva singing, which I just thought was like really, really good. And like
it's really great. Like it's very stylish. It looks good. The choreography is really fun. You get to see like, the early comings of Milla and what she'd become as, a very competent action actress. Very fun. It's disappointing that when you think about it, this is her only like true like action scene. But again, but she does mention like, why is everything like got to be about destroying? Like she's the great entity, but she isn't meant to be the badass. I mean, she is a badass, but that's not even like what she's truly meant to be.
Well, she's also protecting too. So that's the big thing with her, is that she's protecting these stones, and she sees that like this is what we're gonna do. But the Mangalores, or the Mondo Shawins, I guess, or the Mangalores, I think that's what they're called. These other warriors or whatever.
Yeah, that's the warrior aliens.
Yeah, they take over the ship though. So they take over the whole ship. They're just like, all right, fuck it, we're gonna do like whatever Darth Vader's like fucking warriors are. They kind of do that pretty much, and they just like invade the whole ship. And they're just shooting up the place. I will say though that like, not that I'm sensitive to like gun violence a ton or whatever, but watching this, I was just like, oh dear God in heaven, like, because it was happening in like a theater, and like it was all this. I was just like, we didn't know in '97. This is this pre-Columbine. This is before all this other kind of shit. But where I was just like, oh yeah. So that's, and again, it's an action movie, but we're also just like, yeah, this is not always fun to watch, like especially with the state of our world right now.
I guess it is interesting kind of seeing certain things now, like recontextualized a little bit, because like any other time this is just like, oh, this is a fun little shootout scene or whatever, but the specific setting of it being like in a public performance space is like, ooh, that does kind of sting a little bit.
And it doesn't necessarily, it's not Luc Besson's fault, but it's more so just like, okay, but we look at it in 2023 lens now and whatever. But the diva gets shot though, so they are going for her, and then of course Ruby's just like, get down, Corbin, like you got to protect yourself. And so, but Corbin ends up going on stage to go see the diva, and we find out that the diva has actually hidden the stones within her, because she kind of said something about that a little bit, but like wasn't completely clear with it, and he heard her say that, and she was like, okay, what does that mean? But then we actually see that she literally has hidden it within her like guts or whatever she has in regards to.
Talk about commitment to the cause.
Yes, she like puts it in herself pretty much. The stones are in her. So then pretty much he's like, all right, well, these stones are so important. I'm going to take them and I'm going to like, I guess I'll take them now. All right, great. So Corbin takes the stones from them, and then the diva dies, unfortunately. Rest in peace, girl. But anyway, so then we have the Mangalores and the Corbin. They are now, because he is able to get access to a gun of some sort, and he's able to kind of have this shootout going on with the Mangalores and him. He is leading Ruby through this thing to be like, you know, oh, okay. And then I'm like, okay, I guess Ruby's going to be like along with for this ride now. Okay, fun. So
I want to throw out a moment or with this, because again, like we've kind of talked about the way that Besson is like kind of portraying a lot of like the, you know, different tropes of certain characters and stuff. So I think it's funny that people will complain about, you know, Ruby Rhod screaming through this, you know, manly shootout versus, but like, oh, but it's okay when it's a female character that you just throw into an action movie that has no character, you know? So I feel like it's a fun little play on that. It's like, okay, well, what if there's a dude in this gunfight that is absolutely useless and is screaming the whole time? Like, so I feel like that is like very intentional for this set piece, which is really the only like big action set piece in this. Because again, Besson's not really concerned with it. He's like, the whole movie's telling you like, hey, shooting is not the answer.
Exactly, for sure. But yeah, so they end up escaping though. Thank God they're able to. And then we have the so they're escaping, and then they're talking about having to negotiate. And so I do have in my notes negotiate. Because what ends up happening is that Corbin's just like, yeah, no, fuck that. Like, I'm just gonna like shoot you, and that's how we're gonna negotiate. So who else wants to negotiate? Kind of a thing, because again, he's a decorated war hero. Like he's a veteran, I guess, in this sense. So yeah, he knows his way of how to fight, which is important, and that's important to the story. But yeah, well, we're coming up near the halfway end of this movie. Thank God. It's been a long time, but it's been a great time though. But Corbin finds Lilo, who's wounded. So finds her in the room where she was beating their ass or whatever. And so now he finds her and he's like, all right, we're going to take her. So it's him, it's Corbin, Lilu, and Ruby, who are all just like leaving. And I guess the priest is also there too. He's like also like, you know, coming along because they have to evacuate Paradise. So all the people who are still alive in this whole thing, they're now having to evacuate Fhloston pretty much. So
Borg was also there too. He also hitched a ride in there, but then he kind of has a pretty unceremonious.
He does because he comes onto the Paradise, which is where you have the scene where literally like the gang of Corbin and Lilu and all them are escaping, but then Zorg is coming on to Paradise to disarm the bomb, pretty much that he has set up, and so. This is where they don't ever meet each other. They literally are just on screen for like a second. And then that's really interesting too. That's definitely something about this movie.
Yeah. And he just blows up.
He blows up. The Mangalores blow him up, and he disarmed the bomb. He actually did do that. But then the Mangalores were like, it's for honor. And then they just like blow him up. So Zorg's dead. So anyway, fiery ball of destruction is heading for Earth though. So like Zorg's out of the way, the Mangalores are out of the way. They like pretty much suicide bombed themselves. And so this fiery ball of destruction from earlier, the Dark Shadow or whatever it's called, is heading for Earth though. And so they have to try to stop that. And then in the meantime, while they are trying to stop it, and then the priest is pretty much telling them like, hey, we need to go to Earth and we need to go back to to
the temple in Egypt.
To the temple.
They got to fly to Egypt.
Yes, they got to fly to Egypt. But in the meantime, while we're doing this, because Lilu has been a very studious student and she has gone through her whole fucking encyclopedia, and she just got to the letter V, and she's getting to W, and this is where she learns about war. And so we see her learning about like war, and like, you know, we have like pictures of like, you know, World War II and like Hitler and like all this kind of stuff, and she's learning about how horrible the human race has been to each other when it comes to war. And that is kind of that, I don't know if it's shoehorned in necessarily, but it's definitely that kind of thing of like, you know, here's that kind of overly not sappy, but it's just like, don't do war, guys, like, you know, whatever it is. And they have that kind of simplistic kind of like, you know, because it does also show in the movie. So we end up in Egypt to set up the elements because they have to set up the elements as they normally would. But they figure out how to open the elements though, because they're wondering like, well, what the fuck do we do? Like we put them in these different places, but how do we actually do anything with them? And they realize, oh, you go for water, you have to put water on this, and for wind, you have to blow on it or whatever.
Like she literally says it, and he's just like, I don't get what you mean. She's like, wind blows, rain falls, and he's like, I don't get it.
Like what the hell? And they have to like get fire, which they only have like one thing of fire from a match that Corbin has. So they're like, don't do anything. His
smoking addiction and everything. But the war thing, I mean, I mean, at one point I wouldn't say it's shoehorned in because it is still like kind of mentioned throughout. Like she has been just like kind of questioning like, your guys' answer to everything is violence, and that's been the entire movie. But and it gives an interesting moment where she like is like, I don't want to save you, like
exactly,
you guys don't deserve
that's
it.
What I was saying,
like she kind of has like this like turning moment, like I don't want to, like maybe I don't want to be the fifth element is kind of
I don't want to save you guys.
How cunty of her. I love it. Of I'm gonna let the entire world die, but at the same time this is where we learn that she is not the fifth element, but love is the fifth element that activates her and everything with her and Corbin. So, but it's, I guess interesting. That's just like, again, like this all could have been, they were on like this ticking clock that they literally got down to like these seconds before they put everything together. They were on this like ticking clock, but it's like, this would have been all good if they just like would have like reanimated her like earlier, and all she's supposed to do is she's supposed to come to and she's supposed to fall in love. That's it. You're supposed to just let her fall in love. But no, we're worried about shooting stuff and blowing stuff up all the time. And, and all these things, it's just like, no, just like let people, like do, obviously they're just saying like, do the opposite of fighting and killing, but love. And it's a little sappy, but at the same time, like, this again, like this is a space opera, quote unquote, of like, the drama, the theatricality of it all. And like, do you buy into Lilo and Corbin being in love? I mean,
maybe.
It's foggy. Like, yes, he does not really know anything about Lilu, and he very much talks about her physical attraction. But I think there also is there is like something between them and like their performances where like for most of the movie they have this like language barrier, so it's like really them like just communicating on like a more kind of primal basis. So in that kind of way, I kind of maybe believe like, oh, like they're kind of in love beyond like the typical things that we kind of think about maybe. And I'd say at least their chemistry together sells it enough. But like as far as like them being truly in love, I mean, no, it's I don't know about that. It's sappy as hell.
I agree. So then the fiery ball is stopped, and then the world is saved once again, thanks to the Powerpuff Girls. But anyway, so then so we have our end of the movie pretty much at this point. So the world has been saved and it's wonderful and great. We then come back to wherever the hell that Lily was first reborn at. We are back to where whatever the hell that machine is, because I guess that's where she lives. And so we have that it's covered up now, and they're like, oh, well, we need to like have Corbin go on another mission or something, or we need to talk to him, or we need to talk to them. Like, where are they? And then you're like, oh, they just need like about 5 more minutes. Like, it's fine. And so they're getting all hot and heavy within this like tube thing or whatever. And you're like, okay. And then that's how we end the movie, everybody. So then that is the end of The Fifth Element. So
with a song that can only be played at like the end of a 1997 film, like something about that they even freeze frame on the ending of it. I mean, that's they do that's about the only way you can end this movie is on a freeze frame, fucking in a medical tube. We love it.
I love it. But anyway, so to wrap up a little bit, because we've already been going on long enough for
again, I said at the beginning of the episode, this is a movie. There is a lot of movie here.
It's a lot of movie. And for what I normally do on this pod, going through a plot summary, these always take a little bit longer. But anyway, I think a nice little wrap up of this is that this movie, for what it is, I think it is an absolute like wonderful little sci-fi gem, if you will. I think that it has its supporters, it has its haters, whatever. But I do think, like, overall, if you want a fun, campy kind of time, that a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously but still delivers on some kind of a story, I do think that this is one that, you know, is worth a watch for sure. I think it's at least worth a watch. If you don't like it, then okay, but if you do, then hopefully you'll enjoy it. And I'm sure they have other stuff of, like, I wouldn't be surprised if they had, like, continuation of this in, like, comic books or something, or if they hadn't already done that. It has that kind of, and I think it's a great example of something that is both a lauded piece of, you know, film, but also is something where people really also shat on it and hated it. So, and again, that kind of comes into the cult cinema of it all, is that a movie that maybe didn't do great when it came out, or it has been reappraised, or whatever it is. So I don't know. I like it. I'm glad I watched it again, and I maybe even own it. Like, I would buy this maybe, you know.
Oh, I totally need to buy this. It's not my collection yet. I need to. And again, like, you're not, if you're going in for a more traditional sci-fi or a sci-fi action romp, what you have in mind is not exactly what you're going to get from this. You're going to kind of get it. You're going to get a little bit of it. But you're also going to get just, this is, again, like Besson's true interpretation of, like, how he kind of sees the way that these traditional stories could be told, in the way that he does it visually, the things that he prioritizes of this, prioritizing emotion and, aesthetic over the kind of sci-fi-ness of it all. So, you don't always need to have a super serious sci-fi movie to watch.
I think so too, but yeah. And right now this movie, thank God, was on, I didn't have to pay for it. It was on Tubi. So you can catch it on Tubi if you listen to this. And I think it also makes the rounds on, like, I think it makes the rounds on Prime or something like that, where you probably could stream this somewhere. I think it's worth a rent, at least, you know, why not? But yeah, I think, overall, it's a perfectly fun little movie, and I enjoyed myself with it. But DeVaughn, thank you so much for coming on my little show. I really appreciate it. I'm definitely wanting to have you back on if you'd like to. We'll have to just see what else you want to talk about. But, and I'm excited to hopefully go on your show to talk a little something or other, talk shop, if you will. But do you have anything you want to plug? Want to plug your socials, show, all that kind of stuff before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, because I know you don't have too many guests on your show, so I was like,
trying to change that.
I'm in a eclectic company for now, so I appreciated it.
It's you, Pickens, and Jackson. So there you go.
Ooh, I love it. But yes, and you will definitely be coming over onto my show here shortly. That is the Specter Cinema Club. It is a horror podcast hosted by me and my buddy Garrett McDowell, and we dive into the subgenres of horror. That's kind of the basis of the way that we break things down. We kind of have a theme each month, but then we break those down into even smaller subgenres when we talk stuff. So just did a bunch of Evil Dead stuff. We did Ash vs. the Evil Dead, our first TV series, and then doing Evil Dead Rise, of course. And then we got a celebration of camp coming up for Pride Month. We got some remake comparisons that someone here might be getting into. So excited for that. And you can find us on Apple, Spotify, all the things, episodes every Tuesday. And you can find us on socials at Specter Cinema on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at _Daddy Disco.
Yeah, I just followed you on Letterboxd, and it's fun to see what you like to watch and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm just like, I wonder.
I love stalking Letterboxd profiles. I also forgot. I also somewhat co-host on another podcast, the Pod and Pendulum podcast, where we dive into horror franchises and we like tackle like a series all in a row. So you can find me on episodes over there as like a co-panelist.
Love that. All right. Well, thank you so much, DeVaughn, for coming on the show, and really appreciate it. And I hope you have a good rest of your evening. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com. If you'd like to give any movie recommendations, give feedback on the show, or if you'd just like to say hey, I'm open to all of it. You can also follow the show on Instagram at Cult Cinema Circle and on Twitter at Cult Cinecircle. I tend to announce the movies that I'm going to be covering and just interact with people on there if they want. You can also follow me on Letterboxd at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp, all one word. On that platform, I tend to log the movies that I watch. I write little stupid reviews about them and just general foolishness over there. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm pretty much on all of them. Be sure to leave 5 stars and a 1 to 2 sentence review about the show so we can grow the audience and then just spread the love all around. Be sure to tune in next week to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, where I'll be covering 1998's Disturbing Behavior. The new kid in Cradle Bay stumbles across something sinister about the town's method of transforming its unruly teens into upstanding citizens. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. And remember, we're all just a bunch of meats popsicles at the end of the day. Take care. Bye.